Welcome to Suzanne's studio. I'm Suzanne Barnett, your host, and tonight I am so pleased to present my two guests, Elizabeth Seaman and Dr. Jack Hamilton, and they have a wonderful business called Learn to
Resolve.
Learn to Resolve, of course. And what we're going to talk about and what I want to tell you is that they are mediators, and you're going to find out about mediation. And they are so successful, and not only that, but they have a very, very interesting book. So I am so glad you're here. Elizabeth, I haven't met you before till now, and I'm so glad to meet you, and I've known Jack for years.
It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Okay, first of all, what is a mediator?
Well, a mediator is a person who is called upon by people who are having disagreements that they can't resolve to act as a neutral party with these two people who are having the disagreement to help them to resolve this by sharing with each other what the issues are for each of them, and helping the mediator tries to help them to understand each other's situation, which doesn't mean they have to like it or agree with it, but if they can try to understand each other's views and why they feel the way they do and perhaps acted the way they did, then they can work together towards finding a solution. The mediators don't come up with any solutions or make any judgments or decisions, because the people who know best what they need are the people themselves, the parties themselves. And so we help them come to the point where they find a good solution for their situation.
Why don't they go to court to do this?
Well, court seems to be an antagonistic venue. People end up fighting there. They can't really be heard as much. A judge has limited time. In mediation, people can work things out for each other and with each other. In court, somebody else makes a decision for them, which nobody may be happy with, and then even trying to get it implemented can be difficult. Whereas if the parties decide with each other what to do and how to carry it out and what the terms of the agreement are, they're much more likely to be happy with the outcome and to follow through on the agreement they make.
One of the really important roles, as Elizabeth has mentioned, is for the mediator is to listen to each one of the parties in the mediation. And so over time, each party experiences being heard by the mediator. The mediator is so focused on listening and making sure he or she grasps what the party is saying that it has a very positive effect on each of the parties. And that's one of the real secrets to a successful mediation.
And how long have you all been in business together?
We've been in business nearly 25 years.
Well, you know what I would love? If you would do a skit just to show me and our viewers, what is it like? Could you show us?
We'd be glad to do that.
Okay.
And what we decided to do would be to choose a situation between an older, you could say elderly widower who has an adult daughter. She would be about 60 years old, let's say. The elderly father would be about 85, and they have some disagreements. And so the first part of the skit, we're going to demonstrate how people typically talk with each other when they have disagreements. And then the second part of the skit will show how we try to teach people through our book how to communicate more effectively. So I'm going to be Harold, the elderly father.
Yeah.
I will be Tanya, the daughter, and who has come to visit Dad. She lives about 400 or 500 miles away, so she can't be there all the time. But she comes to see Dad, and she's very concerned about his situation because it seems that he's not able to take good care of himself anymore. and a number of issues are coming up. So she's now confronting Dad with this. Dad, you know, I see every time I come that things are getting worse for you.
No, that's not true. I'm doing just fine, Tanya. You just don't have things right.
Well, I see the place is in greater disrepair than the previous times. You're not able to keep up with the things that need to be fixed.
But this is the house you grew up in, and you want me to stay in the house that, you know, we had the children in, you and your brothers and sisters. I mean, this house means so much to me.
Oh, I understand it means a lot to you, but you can't stay in a house that's falling apart under you. And besides that, you're not eating properly, you're not taking right meals, you're not getting the exercise you need. There's just so much that's going on in your life.
That's just a bunch of baloney.
No, it isn't. It's true. I've been observing
3 meals a day, and my neighbors look out for me, so we have a very nice neighborhood.
Well, I know we have a nice neighborhood, but they're growing older too, and there are fewer and fewer of them as they move into retirement homes and into care facilities and so on. And it's time for you to be thinking about a better place where you get the kind of care you need.
But my doctor says I'm in really good health, and I agree with him. Gee.
Well, okay.
Oh, I love that.
So that's the first part of the skit.
Yeah, okay.
And now we're going to demonstrate how we might talk with one another based on the communication principles that we have integrated and included in our book, Conflict, the Unexpected Gift.
Well, Dad, it's good to see you again, and I'm glad we can talk things over. And how are you feeling now?
Well, I'm really glad to see you. You know, you don't come out very often anymore, and so to come all the way you did means a lot to me.
Well, and I'm glad I can do it when I can. I'm a little bit disturbed, though, about some of the things that I see happening here. Tell me, what's your daily routine like?
Well, I take the dog out for a walk first thing in the morning, and then I come back for my coffee and cereal, and then I read the paper, and then, you know, later in the morning I take a nap, and so once in a while I'll walk around the neighborhood and chat with some of the neighbors. Just a very easygoing life.
Okay, so how are you feeling about your life like that?
I think it's great, and I just think the neighbors are wonderful, and we all look out for each other, so it's just the place where I want to be, and I really am not interested in moving anywhere else.
Is there anything that you feel you need help with or that could be better for you?
Well, you know, I am thinking about if it comes a time when I might need more, you know, medical assistance. It's crossed my mind. I have given that some thought, but right now I think I'm doing okay.
So you think for the moment you can stay where you are?
I think you got it.
Okay, okay. What are some things that some of your friends have done that have moved away and are no longer here?
Well, a fellow down the street a ways told me that he's hired a person who works for a company that provides caregivers to you know, older single people, and so he has a lady who comes in and cooks some meals for him and does some cleaning and drives him to his doctor's appointments, and that sounds like a pretty decent approach.
Does he seem to be happy with that?
He wasn't at first because he thought he could do all that himself, but he began to see fairly soon that she was really, you know, quite a help.
How would it feel to you to have somebody come in occasionally, maybe every other week, to clean and to do some cooking for you occasionally? And
well, it sounds reasonable, except it does cost quite a bit of money, so I'm not sure I could fit it into my budget.
Is that something we might look into to see if it's a possibility that might be helpful for you?
Well, and if we could get the prices and everything, I'd be willing to get some more information about it. Yeah.
Well, maybe we can.
But you know, I've told you I don't want to move into an old folks' home.
Well, we're not talking about that. You know, as you said, your friend the neighbor has this lady come in and helps, and that you might find it helpful to have somebody come in too and see how that.
That way, I could stay in my home and I wouldn't be off trying to learn how to live with people I don't know, and I know all my neighbors, and that's just a great pleasure to me.
So, you'd be able to be comfortable where you are in your environment that you know and where you've been for years, and be able to be with your neighbors, and at the same time get some help that would
Well, I really appreciate you understanding, where I'm coming from and what's so important to me.
Okay.
Bravo. But how did you both come to that conclusion from the beginning, where you were making assumptions and you were being defensive? How do you stop that?
Well, it's difficult, I think, sometimes for people to stop that on their own. And so we found that, again, as mediators, that we're able to help people to consider other ways of communicating with each other. And we have that in the book, too, where people can help themselves to do that, and how to stop being antagonistic with each other and trying to best each other, but rather to work together collaboratively, as we ended up doing here in this second part, in order to benefit each person.
And it makes such a difference when I could hear Tanya listening to me, and it seemed like she was really making an effort to feel what I'm feeling. And when I got that sense, it just made such a difference to me.
But how do you teach people how to do that if they don't read your book?
Well, if they don't read our book, they can come to a workshop, or they can, if they feel a need enough, they'll do some research to try to find, or maybe they'll ask a friend who might recommend the book. So, we'll go most anywhere to provide some help and to do some training, workshop, one-on-one coaching also.
And when we do give workshops, typically we work together, we're co-leaders, and the people in the workshop can experience the two of us working cooperatively together. We don't undermine each other, we don't criticize each other, we try to affirm each other and work together in a positive way. And so in that way, we try to model the behaviors that we have written about in our book.
Yeah, but people get so emotional, and what I would like to talk to you all about is that I'm so on the subject of poor listeners. How can you change people? Now, you're mediators, but can you, during your mediation, help people become a better listener? How would you do that?
Well, we have some techniques that we use as mediators. Sometimes, as the mediation is unfolding, and one of the parties says some things that they want the other party to hear, but they're being said in a rather disputatious manner, the mediator can say, "Did you hear what so-and-so just said? It seemed to me that so-and-so was trying to tell you that they're really concerned about your health and your living conditions and so forth." So you can channel the feelings of one party to the other, and that way sort of model some of the listening skills.
And we might also ask the non-speaking party, what was it that they actually just heard from the other person? Or we might use more neutral language in restating what somebody has said. So if you had just said something in a rather disputatious way, as Jack put it,
that's such a good word.
Then I might say, well, do you mean that you were really feeling very upset when your neighbor cut the branches off the tree that is really on your property, and so you got angry about that? Is that what the gist of what you were just saying? And so, you know, the person would say, yeah, and maybe they'd say, yes, that's what I meant, and in addition, you know, and they might come up with more.
But you notice the way she was framing what the other person said. Her tone was calm, and you know, that affects the atmosphere in the mediation. And so that's another major role of the mediator, is to make sure that the key feelings and thoughts are expressed by the parties, but in a tone that shows more respect to each other.
Have you ever had two people that are just so antagonistic to each other, and how do you calm them down? You know, I want to, you know, hear some of the worst experiences and how you deal with them.
Well, once in a while, what we found we have to do is maybe talk with one person at a time. And so we might say, you know, we're having a little difficulty here with the communication at this point. We would like to talk with person A for a while, and then we ask person B maybe to go out of the room, and we might even ask them to do something, to think about how they might word what they want the other person to know. You know, we give them some assignment maybe. So then we'll talk with the first person and maybe try to get them to calm down a bit, because if they're talking to us, it's perhaps easier than talking to the other person. And then if we meet with that person, and whatever is said in a mediation or written in a mediation is totally confidential. It doesn't go anywhere else. And so in these private meetings or caucuses, that's also confidential, unless the party says, no, you can share that. And then we say, well, how about if you share it? And then we would do the same thing with the other party. And so, you know, there are various ways of cooling people down a bit. And also talking about, you know, what is it you'd like to get out of this meeting? What do you want at the end of this meeting? And how are you going to get there?
That certainly sounds better than going to court, where it's
in our experience has been about 90% of the cases we've mediated, people have reached an accommodation, a resolution, and they've made out a set of agreements and signed the agreement page, and they stand up ultimately after 2 or 3 hours. It's not uncommon they give each other hugs, and if not hugs, they almost always shake hands at the end. Whereas when they came in, they were breathing fire, and they were polarized to the max. Sometimes they wouldn't even look at each other, and they'd turn their chairs away from each other at the start.
Yeah.
Sometimes there are hidden agendas, too, that have to be brought out.
Could you give an example of that?
Well, I think about one case where there was a couple, very, very well-dressed, well-spoken, Latino couple, well-educated, and the people they were meeting with were from an car agency, and they had thought that they had gotten certain information at the time that they'd gone in to buy or lease a car, and then later on they found, no, it was something different. And so there was all this non-communication going on between them, and finally separated them. And speaking with the Latino couple, I said, what is there something else going on here? Well, it turned out they did feel that there was racial or ethnic discrimination there, but they didn't want that to be said aloud. Okay, so then I met with the other party, and again I said, do you think something else is going on underneath here, under this? And one of the men said, do they feel maybe that they're being discriminated against? And I said, why don't you ask them? So they came back together again, and the car company people asked the others. And they said, yeah, we did feel that. And so then they talked about that, and the car people apologized and said they were very sorry if they felt that was the case, and could they work again in business in a different way. And, you know, they went out very happily with each other.
You know, Elizabeth mentioned the role of apologies. And apologies play an important role in mediations, because they usually come about when one of the parties recognizes their part in the disagreement or the conflict that has occurred, and they take responsibility for the effect of their behavior on the other person. Now, it takes a while, maybe an hour or two, for that to develop, but if they can take responsibility for their part and how something they said might have been offensive to the other party, and then they can say, quite honestly, I'm really sorry, I apologize for my behavior, and I hope we can move forward in a positive way from here. And then often the other party will also apologize for their part in the conflict.
And apologies are something that are kind of difficult for people to handle often. They'll say, oh, I'm sorry, but that's kind of like a throwaway thing, and it doesn't mean too much. So we've delved into quite a bit here in this book, too, on the subject of apologies. What is a meaningful apology and what isn't, so that people can really get some meat out of that about what to do in the way of an apology that really makes a difference.
And we recognize that often it's, we don't really learn how to give an effective or a meaningful apology. If we haven't seen our parents apologizing to one another, if we haven't experienced other people, it's kind of foreign to us. So it is a learning process to learn how to present, to give a very meaningful and sincere apology.
This comes even from childhood, because maybe one kid pushes another kid, and that kid goes crying to mom, and the kid that did the pushing, the mom says, "You go and apologize and say I'm sorry," and it becomes pro forma, but it isn't meaningful. Trying to put some meaning into it.
Mm-hmm. So, tell us about your book. I think we need to. I'm so impressed with both of you, and there's such a serenity that you both have, and I think that really would help the people. Instead of being wild mediators, you're calm.
Well, what gave us the motivation to write the book was that we had, in our workshops and in our mediations, we saw that people benefited from the process that they were going through. But we weren't sure that when they left, say, the mediation room, they had learned how to go about resolving issues on their own with other people. So we thought if we could write a book which included the communication principles that are the basis of the mediation process, then the readers could possibly learn these skills so that they could go out and practice them and so forth and get better at them, and possibly when they come into the next conflict in their lives, they wouldn't have to call upon a mediator. But conflicts between people, we feel, are inevitable. It's just human nature.
It is. It is.
People see the same situation differently. It's just human nature.
And look at the divorce rate in California.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's more 60. It's 60%.
Really? I didn't know it was that high.
Yeah. Do you do divorce people?
No.
I mean,
divorce mediation?
No, you don't?
No, we don't. We will be happy to talk with people about how they can communicate more effectively with each other during the divorce process and afterwards, because they still have to continue talking with each other, especially if there are children involved. So we can work with them on the communication aspect of it, and that will work.
And over the years, we found that conflicts come up in families all the time.
Oh, of course.
So between husbands and wives, but between siblings and between parents and children, and even three generations in a family. So we've been doing a fair number of family mediations over the years.
Well, we don't have very much time, and so my final question is, what do you each really get out of your profession? What really turns you on?
Well, I think seeing people at the end of the mediation coming out, as Jack has described, where they will shake hands, give each other a hug, be ready to go out and have coffee together with each other. So where people have come in angry and antagonistic with each other and walk out feeling good about each other and about the situation, and being able to drop this burden that they came in with and just be relieved of it. And I find that if people learn that they can do that with each other, especially if they've been using the book, and then they hopefully will, it's ripples that will go out, and we're not going to solve the problems of the world like this, but we figure we can do it 2 at a time.
Say it fast.
Well, and our hope is that through reading the book, they will have learned that what gets people into conflicts are unfounded assumptions, typically, that they make about each other. And when they, through discussion, talking through the issues, if they can realize that the angry feelings that came up in them were really caused by their own assumptions, negative assumptions that they've made about the other person, it's like a breakthrough. That opens the door to possibilities.
What a wonderful way to end this program.
Well, thank you for having us.
Thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure talking with you.
And I really think you two are sensational mediators.
Well, thank you.
And I want to thank our crew. I'm very, very happy about our crew. They save lives. They really, that's an inside joke. But anyway, I don't know what I would do without our crew, but I think it's because once a year I take them to Chef Chu for dinner at a party. And I want to thank our audience so much for watching. And KMVT is the best. And you know what? I can't wait to see you next time. Bye-bye. I always say.